I just gave everybody a little cheat, see where we were going. All right. Hi there, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the webinar, this free webinar called The Basics of the Food Mood Connection. And we hope that you're going to understand that there is a bi-directional relationship between the body and the brain today. My name is Cyndi Collen. I'm a clinical social worker and also a certified mental health integrated medicine provider. And I'm also the owner of Flourish Psychotherapy and Nutrition. And I'm joined today by Angela Nash, functional nutritionist. Hi, Angela.
Thanks, Cyndi. Hi, everyone. Looking forward to being with you.
Great, thanks. So, but before we get started with the real stuff on food and mood, let's bring some mindfulness here and arrive here together at this meeting and focusing, taking a moment here on your breath, connecting to your breath and perhaps setting an intention of being present. If you can, turn off any devices or ringers that might interrupt you or pull your attention away. We hope that you can be fully present with us for this really good share of information. All right, so these are the objectives that Angela and I hope to get out of our time together today. Now, mind you, we could be talking about food and mood for hours and bore y'all, and Angela can get really down and dirty with some long words and organic chemistry, but we decided we wanted to do this basics thing here to get everyone kind of a little bit more familiar with what's going on digestively and how that's affecting mood. So we're going to start with we're hoping that you're going to get out of this that you're going to have an understanding of what the enteric nervous system is, also known as the second brain, how the vagus nerve connects the second brain, our brain, and the autonomic nervous system, and what that means for mental health. Angela's going to talk some about leaky gut, what it is, and how inflammation can negatively impact mood and cause disease that happens from leaky gut. She's also going to talk about the microbiome, what it is. You've maybe heard that it's kind of like a buzzword right now, and how the microbiome has a relationship to what our mood is. We're also going to talk about some foods, specifically gluten and sugar today, and how that can cause or exacerbate inflammation. Now, mind you, there's an awful lot of substances that can cause and exacerbate inflammation, all different kinds of foods besides just gluten and sugar, all different kinds of toxins and chemicals and bacteria and fungus and all this type of stuff. But we're just only going to focus today on gluten and sugar. It's pretty much been everywhere, especially after the holidays. Maybe folks are feeling a sugar hangover for sure. So we thought it was important just to cover those. Now, mind you, we have other things coming up that go into this in more detail, into the other things that I just discussed. And that's going to be, Angela is going to be having a food, a Flourish in 40 group nutrition class that's starting on February 3rd. There are a couple of seats open in that. In terms of you working out what is the right food for you, and all kinds of structured on how to move towards changing what you're doing, because we know it's not easy. And then also I'll be working with Ashley Maltz, a medical doctor here in town and with functional medicine, on a CEU workshop for therapists, for LPC, social worker, and LFMTs, on getting into this food and mood thing with a really, really deep dive. So again, we're just covering the basics today and hope you get some good stuff out of this. But I'm going to start with a little bit of complicated stuff. I'm going to start with the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is made up of, let's say, two facets: the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. Pretty sure most folks have heard of fight or flight. That, right? We want to fight really hard, or scream really loud for help, or run really fast from a saber-toothed tiger or any type of perceived threat. It's a survival mechanism for us. Maybe you haven't heard of parasympathetic, which is also called rest and digest, but that's really where us humans are meant to be a lot of the time. The beauty of this system, I've put it here on a ladder. I borrowed the concept of a ladder from a therapist named Deb Dana, but I have expanded it here just for visual purposes. And I've also included on here the the polyvagal theory pathways of ventral vagal and dorsal vagal, because it does kind of help us understand a little bit more. Now, I know this is I'm going over this quickly, but again, the bottom line here is we're meant to go up and down, let's say this ladder, in and out of survival, even dorsal vagal or withdrawing pretty much all day. We're meant to be able to bounce back from it pretty easy. Um, but what happens is in our modern, crazy, stressful, quick, fast-paced world where stress, even trauma, and fear can engage the sympathetic nervous system, can engage with fight or flight. So things happening externally to you can bring you into fight or flight, and it may be hard to get out of it. And when we're in fight or flight, what happens is that our digestion is turned off. It's turned off for a reason. So we have lots of resources to do all this fighting and running that we need to do to survive. And it also turns off your sex drive. But when it comes down to digestion, if we are in our modern world, if we have stress or have had some trauma, that is still kind of causing some stuff within us, and especially if there's fear, if we even think about what's going on with COVID, we're going to maybe stay in locked in fight or flight a lot longer, which means our digestion is going to be turned off an awful lot. And but we're still eating. You know, you might be eating when you're like this, but knowing that you know that you should eat even though you don't want to, so you do. But then what happens is the body is not capable to digest, and so that can start then turning on the immune system and the nervous system in a different way. And that's what Angela is going to talk about. So basically, when we look at the latter and its relationship to food and mood, what we're talking about here, when we're in the middle of sympathetic, that's usually where anxiety hangs out. You can see the word, you can feel anxious or confused or overwhelmed, have shallow breath and increased heart rate. That's a panic attack, that's anxiety. And then here in dorsal vagal, if we have a frozen response, we're very isolated, we feel hopeless and disconnected, we want to be left alone. And that's where depression can hang out. So what we think about is if we can really look at digestion and how to enhance digestion to allow us to come up the ladder a little easier, what that means is if we're having symptoms of anxiety or depression, that hopefully by looking at digestion and making some targeted changes here, we can make it a little easier to come out of come out of some hopelessness or anxiety a lot easier. All right. So just painting that big picture. And when we look at it like that and we target digestion, I'm sorry, I'm getting this backwards. When we can target the gut and digestive health in therapy, what we can do is reduce mental health symptoms. Now, mind you, I work with a lot of clients. This is usually, usually mostly not where they want to go when we're working together, and that's totally okay. But what I have found is that when chronic symptoms, when people are doing the hard work in therapy or doing whatever they can to manage their symptoms and to heal and have better relationships and better functioning, they're trying all kinds of things, and some things are helping, but there's still some chronic stuff that when we go towards the gut, instead of referring out for psychiatric medications, and they're able to do some nice changes that we collaborate on, then we find that things get a lot better. Symptoms start to change. And the good news that when we do this is that we don't have the harmful side effects of psychiatric medications if we go here first before we think about introducing a medication. And of course, what I like to say, it's kind of free because you're eating anyway. So what we're doing is just changing what you're eating. Now, mind you, we might ask you to buy a little bit more expensive food, but hopefully you'll feel satiated and not need so much of it. So in this way, we find that looking at the large intestine here in this graphic with all this good food, it's the way that we can improve your mental health. All right. And hopefully I'll get these things right, Angela, and as we go, I won't be doing it. All
All
right, so
right.
here you go.
Thank you, Cyndi. And part of the reason that there is a food mood connection is because we have a gut that is our second brain. And that was really big information for me when I realized there's a whole nother brain down in our gut. It is called the enteric nervous system. Enteric means intestine. And our body, in its wisdom, knew that if we are going to use our nutrition to build protein, enzymes, hormones, neurotransmitters, then why would we bother taking all of that up from digestion up to central brain, why not just develop a nervous system in our gut so we can go ahead and process all of those right down there where we need them? So it's a great system, but it means we have two nervous systems, and they are connected, as Cyndi mentioned, by the vagus nerve. It's a bi-directional travel. Um, and interestingly, 80% of the travel happens from gut up to central brain, which was really big and interesting to me, because I think we're used to thinking central brain is directing traffic and it's the air traffic controller, and it's sending signals to the body, but really body is sending signals to brain, which goes back to what we were just talking about. If we're inflamed and we've eaten something allergic or a toxin, or we're so stressed that we have butterflies in our stomach, all of that information is being sent to brain, and then brain can become inflamed, and that starts affecting our mood. So we're going to talk about the microbiome, because that is a big part of our gut, where we have 2 to 4 pounds of beneficial bacteria living in our large intestine, particularly the colon. And they are beneficial bacteria that we really want to cover the entire intestine, to hold space, kind of like really parked cars in a tight parking lot, or little bats in a cave, because if they can hold space in that gut wall, then they are going to prevent pathogenic bacteria from taking hold. And so the more varied you have a beneficial bacteria, the less disease that we have. And so our goal, as we will discuss later, is to have increase the species. This is where in our gut, and particularly in colon, is where we make our neurotransmitters. So again, not everything is happening up in central brain, and 95% of our serotonin is actually made in the gut. So this is just such a great place to protect, and we are going to talk about how we harm it and how we protect the microbiome.
Can we do a little pause here, Angela? Because you just said a pretty bold statement here. 95% of serotonin is made in the gut.
That's right.
Right. And so what we know about serotonin is that, some folks are on antidepressants, and it's recycling serotonin, very focused on brain chemistry. But so this approach, what we're really talking about, well, if a lot of serotonin is made in the gut, what if we look at making a healthy microbiome, and that you can make some healthier, really good, solid serotonin on your own, then maybe, depression could get better. Right.
That's
So I
right.
just wanted to pause to make sure that point that's a big point you just said. So thanks.
It is. It's going to be very instrumental. There's other things it does. Microbiome is also breaking down a lot of our micronutrients, but it's also making some very important B vitamins for us, and distributing things. So let's learn how to take care of it. The microbiome needs a diversity of foods to build diversity in itself. The microbiome actually lives on fibrous prebiotic food in the form of vegetables. It particularly loves insoluble fiber. Proteins, carbohydrates, and a lot of fats and sugars get absorbed by our bodies before they even get down to large intestine and colon, where microbiome lives. So their food is actually fiber. And so I really like us all to look at our plate and just say, what is microbiome, getting out of this meal? And it's kind of become a game around the house. It's like, okay, what are we feeding the microbiome today? It's like, those are creatures we need to take care of. A lot of conventional doctors don't even think about your microbiome. They're starting to, but here's a little factoid. It takes 17 years for information in a peer-reviewed journal that is new, cutting-edge, controlled studies to make it to Newsweek or Time Magazine or your doctor's desk. So this is something you may have to just do on your own, is to take care of microbiome. Proactive dietary changes can really help us prevent disease, and maybe save us from going on medications, and improve the quality of our life. So let's learn how to take care of it.
I love this picture too of the really healthy, fun microbiome here. Yeah.
All right, these are the ways that we can injure microbiome. When we have excessive consumption of sugar, gluten, alcohol, and dairy, there's two things going on. One, those can be harmful to microbiome, but two, when you have too much of those kinds of foods, there's not enough time to eat the 6 to 9 cups of healthy vegetables that you need a day. So you're just eliminating a good opportunity right there, and you're literally starving microbiome. When you eat animal products that are laden with antibiotics and hormones, growth hormones for factory farmed animals, that is harmful, because if you take the word antibiotic apart, it literally means anti-life. And these are just single cell organisms that are very sensitive. So antibiotics that we might take for a pathogen are indiscriminate, and they will also harm the beneficial probiotics. So again, too little fiber, you're going to be starving microbiome. Other insults are overuse of our medication antibiotics, and also overuse of nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, your Advils, your Motrin. Those reduce biodiversity in the bacteria species and kill beneficials. We're trying, they're doing studies now that show that if you can increase your species, the kinds of species that you have, to, upwards of 50. Some people only have 17 different species in their guts. And so that impacts their immune system also. So toxins and chemicals are harmful, particularly Roundup, pesticides that you probably would recognize, but also our beauty products can have harmful products in them, and even cleaning products around the house. So when we do the Flourish in 40 program, we have 6 weeks to do a deeper dive on some of the other harmful ways that you can impact your gut. Stress is, as Cyndi was talking about, very harmful to microbiome. And it's because your stressful events can cause you to produce a lot of cortisol, and cortisol is king in the hormone land. So when you're living in a stressful state all of the time with a lot of cortisol, then you are not sending resources to make digestive hormones, sex hormones, sleep hormones, thyroid hormones, and that all impacts microbiome. All right, so you probably heard the term leaky gut lately, but it's one of those that's used so commonly that sometimes we have to step back and say, what exactly does that mean? The science literature will call it intestinal permeability, meaning an open intestine or an open gut. But leaky gut seems to really have taken hold, and it impacts our inflammation and mood. And so we're going to just show the mechanism for why. When we're eating food, we are literally bringing the outside into our bodies through our mouths and all the way out to our backside. That is still the outside until it crosses our intestinal, the cells that divide our intestine from our bloodstream. And that is only one single cell layer thick. It's called the epithelial layer. And the epithelial layer is supposed to be tight like a fence, really close together cells, so that our body can have time to really digest the food down into very small particles that can then go into bloodstream. But if we damage that epithelial layer and cause swelling and inflammation, though that tight junction opens and it lets toxins and undigested food go into the bloodstream too early. So let's look at this diagram on the right. And when you see those pink cells, do you see how close together they are, like a tight fence? And the only thing that can get through there is really tiny, tiny particles of digested food. But the red swollen ones on the side have opened up, and then that is when a large, like say a big molecule of dairy can go across. And if you think about what dairy is, that's a 2,000-pound bovine. So its milk molecule is just huge, and it really doesn't belong on the other side into the bloodstream until it's been more broken down. So that's where it can be viewed as an invader by our immune system, and then trigger inflammation, trigger a sympathetic nervous response, and take us out of parasympathetic and put us in a danger inflammatory response. And remember what's happening in the enteric nervous system, that information is going to travel up to brain. So that's the connection that we're trying to make tonight, is that when you've inflamed your gut, it's not an isolated place. That information will travel up vagus nerve to brain, tell brain, hey, we're in danger, something's going on, and brain will feel inflamed as well. And that can exhibit itself as depression for us. So gluten is another one of those terms thrown around so much, particularly in the grocery store. I just get so cracked up when they say something's gluten-free, and it's always been gluten-free. You know, it's a fermented pickle, for heaven's sakes. But it's a popular word. So let's talk about why gluten is inflammatory. They used to just think that people were just allergic to the gluten protein, which is this lovely complex molecule that makes our pastries feel very elastic, and it makes pizza dough easy to work with and pie crust easy to roll out. But it's not just that people are allergic to gluten per se. There are two other mechanisms that could be causing that inflammatory reaction. And one has to do with something called zonulin, which is a molecule that holds those tight junctions together. Like we were talking about, they're supposed to be close as they can possibly be. And there's a molecule in gluten called gliadin. And when the gliadin hooks onto a zonulin receptor, it causes zonulin to relax, and those walls become open and porous. So that's the second mechanism. The third mechanism is that most of our wheat, barley, and rye are, and a lot of other grains, actually soybeans, they're all impregnated with glyphosate to make them guard against pesticides. And then when we eat them, we're ingesting glyphosate. So there are really three ways that gluten can cause damage to our microbiome and to our
And
gut.
just to be clear, glyphosate is the term for what's used in Roundup.
Oh,
So it's a
Roundup.
toxic chemical. Yeah.
Thank you, Cyndi.
Sure.
Yes,
Sure.
it is. And they'll talk about seeds being Roundup ready, and that's what that means. They've already been pre-impregnated. It's kind of a GMO way to get the Roundup in the seed.
And there's
So
even, I think you and I have talked about that there is even some controversy here that a lot of folks are, do better when they're avoiding gluten. And I mean, gluten's been around for a long time. So why now? Why are our human bodies right now maybe having a harder time digesting gluten? And so and I think that, more research and more things will show that it could even have a lot to do with glyphosate being such a big part of grain products now, and it may be the body really reacting even
mhm,
more negatively to the glyphosate than to the the glada.
the
the,
gliadin, yeah,
Thank you.
that's
You do a
right.
better job with those
Yeah,
words than
they're
I do.
thinking it is more about the glyphosate. So there's three avenues it could be. So there's a functional medicine and Dr. Tom O'Brien, and he has spent a lot of time, authored a lot of books about gluten's negative impact on the body and the connection to autoimmune disorders. And his quote he likes to say is that the most common source of inflammation is what's on the end of your fork. And most of the time that's a wheat product, and triggering inflammation across the board for everyone. And Dr. Alan Bredesen is a neurologist who's working on Alzheimer's, and he is even noticing that inflammation is a very large cause for Alzheimer's, and it can be inflammation from so many places. It can be from your gums or different diseases that you have, but gluten and glyphosate are being connected even with Alzheimer's because they're cause so much inflammation in the body. So the other thing you hear about is sugar. We've all grown up knowing sugar is bad, but do we actually know the mechanism of why? So I know that I'm a little more I'm prone to being obedient to to good behavior if I know why. So let's say why we need to have less sugar. First of all, sugar is actually just a toxic substance to brains and to neurons. It is a great energy source. It gives us quick energy, but it doesn't burn cleanly. It has forms some sticky dysfunctional proteins that cause a lot of damage. And so our bodies can burn sugar, or they can burn fat. And actually, fat is the preferred mechanism because it burns more cleanly than sugar. Sugar can be toxic to molecules and particularly our neurotransmitters and our hormones. It can stick onto proteins, and then those proteins are not as functional when they have a sugar molecule stuck on them. High sugar diets can trigger the danger response with that cortisol, spiking cortisol, that something's going on. So let's look at that real, that mechanism over there. What happens, you eat sugar and it's delicious and you get really happy. It has addictive properties. You actually release dopamine when you eat sugar, so it is an addictive substance. And then we have this mechanism going on with insulin. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just tell you a couple things about insulin because it kind of explains this whole sugar thing. Insulin can be two things. It can be a sugar delivery system, or it can be a fat generating hormone, a fat building hormone. So the first time you have sugar in your bloodstream, insulin comes out, and its job is literally to escort the sugar into your cells for energy. And so it's got a way to unlock a glucose channel. Glucose goes in, cell gets energy, you have energy, and then your blood sugar is gone because insulin's tidily put it all in the cells. Then you have a drop and a craving, and you might have some more sugar if you don't have any protein or fat around. If you do that again, then the cells start rejecting the sugar because we talked about it being toxic. And cells said, I have enough energy. It's not burning very cleanly for me. I had enough. So then insulin still has to get the sugar out of the bloodstream because our bodies really don't like to have a lot of sugar in bloodstream. It can roughen up the epithelial layers of the circulatory system and cause all kinds of problems there by roughing it up, and then plaques get stuck. So insulin has to say, well, we got to get the sugar out of our bloodstream somehow. Let's go build adipose or fat tissue around the waist. So either way, you're going to clear the bloodstream of sugar and you're going to drop and need some energy. So we really want to stress that if you can reduce sugar, you're going to help balance your mood. And we're going to talk about other foods besides sugar that you can do that can help balance mood.
Well, we can also just as a little thing, we were talking about sympathetic, but what can happen is that if you are in a down spiral of your blood sugar falling rapidly, whether it's from too much sugar or there's been a long time since you've eaten a meal, it can feel you can experience a panic attack. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
I know
Mm-hmm.
for my clients that the biggest thing I ask is because I am an anxiety specialist, if people come in and are talking about panic attacks, we're called, when was the last panic attack? And usually what I'll look at, what happened to 24 hours beforehand. And it's usually even a few hours beforehand. When was the last time you ate? What did you eat? What were you drinking? How did you sleep? Like looking at anxiety through this different lens. But more often than not, it has a lot to do with skipping a meal, which is a blood sugar level, or going like on a sugar binge. I mean, it happens around. I know even for me years ago, I used to, the Halloween candy that wasn't eaten, and once I have one piece, I get caught in this cycle in a really big way, and then lo and behold, very soon afterwards, my level of anxiety rises and goes through the roof, and I'm very prone to have an anxiety attack when I'm in the middle of that. So it's like, anyway, just thinking about blood sugar falling and anxiety kind of can go together too.
So let's balance that. Let's figure out how to manage the insulin and the sugar. Instead of getting shaky, dizzy, and hungry, let's figure something better out. First, let's avoid sugar in the processed snacks that quickly turn to sugar, like the chips and crackers. And, even granola, which is supposed to be healthy, oats are healthy when they're steel cut and whole. And, but then once you flatten them out, cover them with oil and sugar and bake them, they turn to sugar. So those quick snacks are really convenient, but they are not going to give sustained energy. So instead, let's try vegetables, nuts, complex carbs, Even some fruit. These are foods that will take longer to break down. I like to call them extended release sugar. So you've got some fat and protein that takes longer to digest, and it can give you more sustained release of energy and help you improve your mood without anxiety and a sugar drop.
Can you, Angela,
Um,
can you just give some examples of complex carbs?
yeah, like the difference between a package of sugar and a cherry, or a sweet potato. You know, it is sweet, but it's also got a lot of fiber, vegetable matter, micronutrients, phytonutrients from the plants. So any vegetable, even a broccoli, is actually going to eventually turn to sugar, but it's a complex carbohydrate in that it will take longer to digest and
Good,
has a lot more nutrition.
thanks.
So during your breakfast and lunch is when I pack my snacks. I know that I'm going to be hungry in 2 or 3 hours, and that I usually need a snack at least in the morning or in the afternoon. So while I'm making my breakfast or my lunch, I go ahead and put something in a bowl for the next couple of hours. It might be some pepitas, which are really high in magnesium, just nice little pumpkin seeds. It could be some cherries, it could be hummus and carrots, just 30 seconds, pop it in a glass container, and then you will avoid your snack attack, or at least have something on board.
Great.
All right. So the way after we realize that we might have a damaged and leaky gut, we want to know if there are ways to heal it. And there certainly are. We examine our diet, and then we do the 4 R's: remove, replace, repair, and rebalance. So of course, we're going to remove things that are causing inflammation in the first place. A lot of the things we've talked about already, but also there's some not so wonderful oils and dairy, processed foods that we can also eliminate. And then replace that with whole foods, increase our vegetables, increase fermented foods. Microbiome loves adding extra organisms through fermentation, and whole foods that we would make at home. Repair. If you really do have a torn up, swollen, red, open, gappy, leaky gut, then we really do need to do something for repair. And so taking digestive enzymes will help you break down your food and absorb the nutrition that you actually need to do repair, because all repair is done with protein. To rebuild or at a cellular level and create enzymes, you need to be able to assimilate your protein, and digestive enzymes are really helpful with that. Also, simply drinking bone broth. Bone broth is, meat and bones that have been cooked for 36 to 72 hours. And the reason for that long cooking is that you break down the protein into its base element of little amino acids that are immediately absorbed. So that's why people that have really bad chronic illness or even cancer, sometimes the only thing they can drink is bone broth, because it's pre-digested. All the cooking pre-digested it, and it's super healthy for gut. Because it's instantly able to be applied and to help it rebuild itself. We also like to work with a lab called Microbiome Labs, and they produce a really great probiotic. And then they also have other products for healing gut if you're in a bad gut, have a very injured gut.
Can you pause here and talk a little bit more about the role of good bacteria and probiotics in microbiome and its effect on mood, if you can?
Well, sure. Since they're making our neurotransmitters, we really do want to have a diverse population in there. And if when we were young people, maybe had too many antibiotics, or we've lived in chronic stress and we've injured our microbiome, a lot of people will wonder, oh, can I regenerate? Can it regenerate those guys? And it's hard to, even when you're taking a probiotic. Have to do full disclosure. You don't always recolonize. Sometimes you just have to stay on a good quality probiotic for, people will go in and out, cycle in and out, but they have done studies that sometimes it can be a little bit controversial whether people want to stay on it all the time, or whether you are introducing more problems by overdeveloping one particular species. So I would say it's nice to kind of move around to different products. And the reason we like the Microbiome Labs one is because it's called an endospore form. And without getting too granular, you can have a living probiotic, or you can have one in the dormant stage. And if you take the endospore form, which is dormant, then it has a better chance of lasting all the way through digestion and helping get down there and colonize and help you make your neurotransmitters and heal your gut to, of course, improve your mood.
Right. So I just want, because I know I get a lot of questions about probiotics. Oh, I'm just taking a probiotic, so everything is fine. But it is not the be it to end all. And
Yeah.
actually, I mean, you talk really beautifully about microbiome, and about there are ways to increase the really good bugs in your microbiome without even using a probiotic. You might use a prebiotic supplement that helps fertilize the soil and microbiome, but feeding your microbiome, like Angela likes, what are we feeding our microbiome? Like whether it's all onions and leafy vegetables and other types of, a diverse amount of different foods is a way to really recolonize the bacteria in there. And I know that you've talked about that the bad guys like elbow out the good guys, in terms of the bacteria, and that can happen when we have an injury to the microbiome. But the thing is that repairing leaky gut is, we can put it here, oh, just take this supplement and just take this and just increase your things, but knowing that it is usually a little bit more work than just taking a pill and maybe adding some kimchi once a
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, it really can be. And it's disheartening to know that maybe after 2 or 3 weeks, they don't totally colonize and live there. But here's something fun to do. And that is, I learned just, recently, that every vegetable has its own personal microbiome and species that live on it.
Wow.
And so next time you go to Central Market, if you usually get kale, get dandelion greens. If you usually get chard, get collard greens. If you usually get beets, the red ones, get the yellow ones, because then you have a better chance of colonizing, because you're actually putting those bugs, in your body the way they were natively meant to go in our body. Think about the farmer that used to pick the carrot, wipe it on his shirt, and eat it. He's literally eating dirt, but that is actually a movement, because if you have a lovely farm soil, it's considered clean, and you can get a great diversity just by eating naturally.
Yeah.
um,
Thank you.
and here's a little tip. You may try to do a lot of this on your own, but it can be soothing to have maybe just one visit with a functional nutritionist to get the right supplement mix for you. If you're confused, if you feel like you need some supplements, work with somebody for a visit or two. And also, that person can do some questionnaires with you so that you can target your particular point or points of inflammation, because you might feel like your weakness is hormones. Well, then you would want to work on your nutrition that's really going to support your hormone levels. Or you might know you have leaky gut and you get so torn up every time you eat dairy. So work with someone that can help you find the low-hanging fruit if you have questions, rather than just try for several months on your own and be maybe confused and overwhelmed.
Right.
All right.
And then, but we've also, so you can repair leaky gut this way, but also talk about just enhancing digestion even without using a supplement.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot our mindfulness. I got so busy talking about microbiome, but I love the idea of taking those 3 really deep belly breaths before you start preparing food, but particularly before you start eating. And the reason that works is when you breathe in, you fill your belly with air, and then you exhale all the way. When you do that 3 times, you're sending this very important message to your body that you are safe, that you have time to cook food, you have time to digest food, eat food. because obviously you're not running around from tigers if you are taking those 3 really long breaths. And that can soothe you at nighttime also if you have trouble going to sleep. But
So it's
so
moving you up the ladder when
it
you take those
is,
long breaths.
and you need those digestive enzymes. And so, you know, that deep breath to say, "Hey, I'm safe enough that I can sit here and eat," is really helpful to starting your digestive enzymes flowing. Also, chewing your food thoroughly. You know, grandmothers told us that, mothers told us that, but it's such a thing. Um, and about 25 times is really optimal to chew your food and put all those lovely enzymes, salivary enzymes, in your food even before it goes to your tummy. And
Which is
then,
wild because, I mean, this thing that happens, when we have devices or, whether it's your smartphone in front of you while you're eating or you're distracted, you don't even realize that you're not chewing your food. And right. And so that another one of the doctors that we follow in terms of books and take trainings from, Dr. Ben Lynch, he did an interview and they said, out of all the things that you've talked about in this past hour and a half, what are the top 1 or 2 things that people can take away? And he just went, this is a guy with a whole supplement line called, Seeking Health. And he said, the number 1 thing I would tell people to do is to chew your food thoroughly because your stomach doesn't have teeth. Right.
that's
So
good.
in order for the nutrients in this really good food that you're making, let's say you're making really great food, but it may not get to where it needs to within your body if you're mindlessly eating and not really chewing properly, because it's not breaking it down enough in order for the body to break it down even further and figure out, what to absorb, what to upload for nutrients and what to eliminate. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I have to take that to one more little level that just feels a little woo woo sometimes, but I like to think about the food in terms of what nutrition is in it and where it's going to go in my body. And I don't always do this because so many times you're chatting during dinner and things like that. But I try to just slow down sometimes and just think, okay, I just spent $20 on this gorgeous, wild caught salmon. It has omega-3s for me. I like to at least think about, I'm getting live omega-3s today, not from a pill. I'm getting it from my food, and just talk to your body and say, hey, body, something wonderful is coming your way. And I just feel like it has a better chance of making an impact.
Nice. I like that. I like
Yeah.
that.
All right. What's next? Ah, back to our illustration. You guys know this by now. Let's stick to real foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, organic when possible. And that's not always possible. And there's a list from the Environmental Working Group about foods that if you can't find organic, they're still okay. Like right now, avocados and asparagus are on that list for if they're not organic, they're still okay. Yeah, you take all that with a grain of salt. Just do the very best you can, because microbiome does not like the pesticides. Hormone and antibiotic-free meats, same thing. If you have to buy less, go ahead and make it be really good quality. Wild-caught fish has your omega-3s. Happy chickens that run around the yard and eat grass and live outside make omega-3s for us. So try to spend your money on those chickens and those eggs. Legumes, if they're well tolerated, and nuts and seeds the same way.
Can you
They
just
can,
just mention briefly what a legume is, like some of the
oh
examples?
yeah, peanuts and beans, things that come in a pod. And uh, the the reason that they can be irritating, we said if well tolerated, plants in their wisdom have these little irritants called lectins and um, phytates in them, and it's really designed so that it will poop them out really quickly so they can grow another plant, and so they can be irritating to us. But if you're not irritated by them, then they're really a great sustained energy and
Thanks.
complex carbs. All right. So we're talking about possibly giving up some of your maybe favorite food groups, alcohol, sugar, gluten, dairy. You can go into withdrawal, particularly from sugar and caffeine. You can be irritable and have a headache and anxiousness and cravings. And that's really a symbol that you were kind of addicted to that thing. So try to stick with it. Some people want to do all 5 or 6 common inflammatory foods at once, and do a full elimination diet for 3 or 4 weeks and then slowly reintroduce them. To some, that can feel just overwhelming. So just find a broad category that you're comfortable giving up. And at least if you give it up for 3 or 4 weeks and then slowly reintroduce it, you might get some very important information that that was indeed inflammatory for you, or that maybe it wasn't as inflammatory as you might have thought. Um, but give it enough time to where you can really listen to your body, listen to whether you get a gripey tummy, whether you feel better, whether you're sleeping more. And so over here, you're feeling kind of grouchy because you're giving up something you love, but see if those good feelings of better sleep or better energy maybe can drown out the feelings of deprivation for a while. Just look at it as your own personal science experiment on yourself.
It's also, what we'll do with mental health, and we'll get into this when we get into the elimination pieces. But again, elimination diets, they can be helpful even if it's just one category of food that you eliminate. And I'll have clients tracking their mood and their
Mm,
level of energy
mhm,
before they're taking something away, and even their sleep quality. Um, because what is really what we're trying to do is just taking it away and seeing what happens. The thing is that when you start to feel better, it is a game changer. It's like I had, for me, for instance, um, and I mean, I could use client stories here, but I'll just use my own personal one. Is that I have my own journey with a chronic illness and chronic inflammation for many years, um, and I had finally eliminated dairy. I'd eliminated grains about a year or so before, but when I decided to eliminate dairy, all of a sudden, I didn't even notice actually. All of a sudden, and that, I mean, I still felt good actually. I had better elimination, things were better. But it was a few months later, like 2 or 3 months later, that I was going to I was planning going on vacation. And usually about a week before I would go on vacation, my level of anxiety would rise significantly. I'd get very overwhelmed, making decisions for packing were there. I get panic attacks while I'm flying. So I'm starting to have a lot of anxiety about knowing a panic attack is maybe going to come, soon, whatever. And so, but this one time after I had eliminated dairy, I'm like 2 or 3 days away from going away, had already been packing, doing the thing that I normally do. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not anxious. I'm sleeping okay. I'm organized with my thoughts. So in other words, I was not in fight or flight. Right. And so the same thing that I do all the time. And the only thing that had changed was eliminating dairy. And so it was then that I thought, oh God, oh gosh, I mean, I'd so miss a nice mozzarella and stretchy, stuff that has to do with cheese and the really nice creamy feel of a nice ice cream. But at the same time, I really like not having a level of anxiety that can be really irritating for others around me as well as it is for me. So this thing about when you experience, even if it's only a few days to take something, that we ask you to really be mindful of how does it feel to be you? Like what, are there some um, positive things that are happening, even though that you might be doing something that's hard and you miss something and it's a big change, but what are the payoffs? Where are the rewards? And sometimes that's enough to keep you going.
yay, thanks. Great story. So we're getting a little close on time, so I'm just gonna talk briefly about
We have
elimination,
time. We
but
have
just to say that removing waste can feel as important as putting something really good in your body. And the reason is that if our bodies are inflamed because we are holding on to toxins, often we hold on to it in our adipose tissue. Um, and then we are maybe trying to eliminate toxins. If we can't daily eliminate those toxins, they're going to get reabsorbed by our bodies. So it's just really important to have regular elimination. And our emunctories that take care of that for us, our kidneys and lymphatic system and liver and skin, that are carrying our waste products down towards our intestines, they need a lot of water. So really, let's be mindful of have as much water as possible so that we can go ahead and eliminate regularly and not reabsorb those toxins. Experts say that even pooping just once a day is considered constipation, that 2 to 3 times a day is ideal. So um, just putting that out there, that once you start increasing your fiber and taking better care of microbiome, hopefully a happy side effect will be that you'll have more regular elimination. This guy over here at Christmas just seems to be happy with one, but we're really hoping for 2 to 3 for you guys. And magnesium can help with that. So let's strive to that. Fiber, let's just give a little detail on fiber and how that can help. Number one, right, it feeds microbiome. But two, it's going to have some laxative effects. And there are two kinds of fiber going on. Soluble means that it dissolves in water. So soluble fiber is like from beans and oats, lentils. Certain fruits and vegetables actually are soluble as well. And those are going to give us that nice sense of satiety, make us feel full and slow down our digestion. But then the other kind, the insoluble fiber, the ones that feed microbiome, is going to be like a scrubby brush. And so it's going to be maybe speeding up digestion a little bit because it's cleansing and it's removing things quickly. So if you have a real full meal and you feel super bloated, go ahead and try to have insoluble fiber and go ahead and pass that quickly. Get your peristaltic motion going with that. All right.
So we've got some takeaways for y'all to hear for y'all today. That hopefully what you're getting out this is be mindfully aware of what you're eating and what you're not eating. And hopefully you're getting from us that no judgment here. We're not, if you can't eat this way, that's okay too. But this is only about empowering you with some knowledge and some awareness and starting to maybe connect you to your body through eating to help you make whatever changes you need to do to feel better. That's really, really what it's all about. And that, of course, enhancing digestion doesn't necessarily take, supplements or whatever, but just even slowing down and breathing and chewing thoroughly and eating without distractions, making sure that we're eliminating healthfully every day and drinking a lot of water. These are great takeaways just out of here that, again, really don't cost you any money to do, but just hopefully shifting your connection to food in a way that gives you a better mental health and better mental wellness. And of course, we would encourage you to consider eliminating at least one category of inflammatory food, even if it's for a few days. I call this fun. This is a fun thing to do. It's like doing your own science experiment on yourself. Like, especially during COVID, you're home, we're not really eating out. You have this is like COVID fun time. Let me take sugar out for like a few days and see how I feel. Right? Alcohol might be hard right now to take out, but even if it's for a few days, see how that goes. And then of course we're still going into this COVID thing that, if you prepare most of your food at home, the big thing is that you know what ingredients are in there. You're going to be more mindful about what you're putting in because you're the one purchasing the ingredients. If you're eating prepared food outside, you're not really sure where the ingredients came from, what really are they. But for this thing, if you're preparing your own food at home, just even doing it for a couple of days, say, I'm going to go like a whole 48 hours making everything on my own that I eat instead of going out, and just seeing how you feel. And there's also this really nice thing that this gift that you're giving yourself, that you're telling your body that I'm nurturing you. I care about you, microbiome. That's that kind of woo-woo thing Angela was talking about. I'm going to give you stuff that I think that you need, or maybe you're calling on me. Like you're telling me, hey, give me more vegetables here. Right. That so when we can do that and really bring this whole, this is to me is self-care. To me, self-care is preparing your own nutritious food rather than getting a massage, because this self-care is what's going to really prevent and any kind of really crappy medical stuff, and even all this mental health stuff that maybe you're suffering from. We have some recommendations here for some books if you want to read more. I'm happy to send this particular list out to y'all. You don't have to do this now. And of course, on our website, Flourish in Austin, we have some good recipes and even meditations. The meditations are there, that they're all about the belly breathing that Angela was talking about, to help you get into more diaphragmatic belly breathing so you can get up into parasympathetic nervous system, get up the ladder. And of course, Whole30 is a really good resource for how to make some changes. Of course, we have our own version of Whole30 called Flourish in 40, and that's the group class that Angela will be doing soon. Now, we covered a bunch of stuff here today. And I'm going to get rid of the screen and just go back to you and I, Angela. So we covered an awful lot of stuff, but know that there's stuff that we kind of passed over, and so will be that CEU workshop for therapists is going to go really into the deep dive into the science of the enteric nervous system, more so into intestinal health and that whole bacteria diversity dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of diversity, and how that affects mood. So hopefully some therapists will sign up for that workshop. It's on February 12th. But outside of that, we're happy to open up the floor for questions. If I can figure out, Angela, how to do that on mine. And of course.
Did you open the Q&A? I don't see any
Oh, so
open questions.
yeah, does anybody want to give us any questions here in the Q&A? I'm losing how I can turn your microphones on here. This is new software for me. I was using another one before, but does anybody have any questions? You want to put maybe questions about food or any of the material? We're happy to answer them. I see people dropping off. I don't see any questions. Goodness, I wish I could. How does leaky gut play into IBS? Great question, actually. I'm going to just say something here to say that what I have experienced is that when I do, again, I'm an anxiety specialist, and when most people come to me with a lot of chronic anxiety symptoms that have been around a long time, I would say at least 75% of them have been diagnosed with IBS. So that connection between IBS and anxiety is real. But the connection between leaky gut and IBS, do you want to answer that in your way, Angela, perhaps?
Well, I mean, irritable bowel syndrome can be caused from so many things, but one of the mechanisms of that is that it's going to irritate your intestines. So it's kind of like one of those chicken and eggs, did leaky gut start first, or irritable bowel syndrome start first? You really have to work backwards and see what started your initial irritation, whether it's a pathogen or whether it's a food irritation. So it's kind of it's a research project. There's some tests to do on that, and so what I would say is yes, your irritable, your leaky gut is in that case one of the symptoms of it. But you can work on healing leaky gut and do the low-hanging fruit that we have talked about today, and see if you can heal and tighten up. And then if you don't, then you can work with a functional medicine doctor that's more specialized, because there is some complex testing in that.
But it's also that's very, very true. But also, I guess you can even think about it. IBS for some people is because they might have alternating, constipation and diarrhea or loose bowels, or some really bad bloating and feeling, after they eat. And so when you look at leaky gut, the thing is, when you go to heal leaky gut, what you kind of can be doing, if you're gifted, that you're not too complex, like what Angela was saying, because a lot of folks are complex. But the goal is, if you repair leaky gut, you might get rid of IBS. That's the goal. And it's a big possibility. And if it doesn't completely go away when you're repairing leaky gut, it is definitely going to help you get a handle on, let's say, then, like what Angela's saying, if it's not completely going away after healing leaky gut, then that's when you would go to a doctor do some more tests to find out what else is going on. But it's a wonderful first step for anything, especially for IBS, which is to really looking towards healing leaky gut. We have another question about cooking vegetables. Does it reduce the good bacteria that we can absorb? It's like good news, bad news. It depends on how you cook them, right? That some of the nutrients come out. Let's say sauteing them or steaming them lightly, can help them retain their nutrients a lot more. Obviously, boiling them for more than a couple minutes, which is parboiling, very briefly. But the more you boil them, you're going to really kind of drain out a lot of nutrients. But at the same time, raw foods are wonderful. But at the same time, for some people that have digestion problems, that cooking food is easier to actually digest. So it's one of these things, depending, and again, this depends on you, that if you are one of those people having problems digesting, it's better to cook the food because you'll be able to absorb the nutrients easier than it is to eat the raw food and having your body having a real hard time breaking down the food that's raw. So it's like good, you have to kind of take it. And that's why working with a nutritionist to determine what's a good fit for you is really the way to go here.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just try the foods raw that you can that don't cause irritation, and then the ones that need to be cooked. And some of them, like your cruciferous, need to be cooked anyway to break down that cell wall so you can actually absorb it. I'm going to go back up to catch Ryan's question.
Yeah, good
Cyndi,
question.
I'll answer that live. Ryan asked, is organic wheat an okay food to digest due to it being free of the glyphosate? And will that be included in the ingredients list? Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it'll say that it's organic, and you kind of have to do that elimination test with yourself first. Go ahead and take all of it away, I would say, for 3 or 4 weeks, because you don't know if you're one of those people that's having an immune response to it because it's you're really gluten sensitive, or whether it's the glyphosate, or whether your zonulin mechanism is interacting with the gliadin. In that case, at least in 2 of those situations, you should probably go ahead and eliminate it anyway, even if it is saying that it's organic and no non-glyphosate, because the glyphosate might not be the problem for you. So that's one of those, let's go for the full elimination. And then when you reintroduce, do just, a really clean organic wheat product that is grown in a safe place.
Which is hard to find, because even though that farm may not be using glyphosate, if something close by is and the wind carries it. So there is, even though we try really hard, and it can say organic and it can say non-GMO, which kind of implies that there's nothing modified that would have glyphosate in it. It still may have it. So we're kind of in a screwy place with that.
Yeah, I don't take any chances. I just say just all of it's off the table. It's just easier in a way, because we're so blessed right now with when we need that treat. We have really great brown rice pasta, which I feel so grateful, and we have some yummy rice crackers, and so I don't feel too deprived. Second question from Ryan is that I know we discussed fruit being an alternative to sugar, but he thought Cyndi and I might be kind of leaning towards, not having a lot of fruit. And the reason that I hedged on putting fruit first is because fructose sugar is really hard on the liver. It only gets broken down and converted into glycogen in the liver, and not everybody has enough receptors to take fructose across the intestinal wall, and so it can cause diarrhea in some people. So that's kind of just a more, when you work with somebody, or if you do Flourish in 40, we're going to spend a little more time on fruits. And so that's why I didn't say just go wild and eat as much, sugar fruit as you want, because it still has some problems.
But there's also, like, if you think about a fruit smoothie, like really the best smoothie that you can do is going to be a combination of fruits and vegetables, right? Rather than just fruit. So giving yourself some other properties in there besides just fructose, right? And even adding some fats in there, because again, if you've got just the sugar and just the fructose, you want to have it a little bit more balanced, making sure there's some fiber, there's some good fat, there's some other phytonutrients in there. So it becomes more of a well-rounded gift to your microbiome, right, than just staying on the sugar, well, let's say on the sweeter side. And so like even when you like what you talk about there, that about um the other thing is like I love dates, and dates is to me like this great gift to me when I am not eating real processed sugar. And then you'll have responses from some people, but it's full of sugar, like they're really high in fructose. And I said, but it's really, really high in fiber. So it's this really balanced kind of way to get something sweet in you, but because it is so high in fiber, it doesn't really do us a blood sugar spike like if I were to have a smoothie that just had a bunch of pineapple and
Or
mango
mangoes.
and strawberries, in it, that doesn't have anything else to balance it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question, Ryan. All right, and then we have another one. What about drinking cold, fresh juices from a local juice bar? Well, is this a plug for Juice Land? Because I love Juice Land. So, I don't know if you're kind of asking about that, but Juice Land really does it right. They're very, very particular about what they put in their smoothies, and how they do their juices and the combination of that. But go ahead, Angela. I'm sure you have some more to say here.
I'm just going to say, yeah, be careful with those. And if look at your ingredient order. If apple and mango are the first two ingredients, then it's going to be a really high sugar juice. So like Cyndi said, just try to get one with maybe greens being the first ingredient, and then they used apples or carrots as a sweetener.
And I mean, I go to Juice Land a bunch, or I used to, and then I bought my own juicer. They have something called the Fountain. They have all of their juices really don't have a whole lot of maybe there's like a little more apple in it than maybe I would do for myself. But it really is a good place to start. But the other thing about drinking cold, fresh juices, especially if it's a lot of vegetables in it, is that your body is not working to break it down. It doesn't have to digest it. I've done this summer, I did 4 different juice fasts while I was doing a liver and gallbladder. And that's all I had for 6 days were homemade juices. And, 80% of what was in there were vegetables. And I was okay. I was a little hungry, but I had enough energy. I drank an awful lot of it. I slept all right. Everything kind of felt good. But it was but I actually had more energy during those juice fasts at the end, because the theory is that I'm not using energy in my digestion system to break down food. So the reason why I did it was so I can do the body had more resources to really detox liver and gallbladder. So it is a way to upload, let's say, good nutrition. You don't have to absorb it so well. But again, you have to be careful, like what Angela said about the ingredients, the sources, and the mix of how you introduce it in. That was a good question. Thank you.
Ryan asked us one more question. He said, could we give some examples of digestive enzymes and bad oils? Yeah, sorry, I probably breezed over that oil section tonight. So thank you for bringing that up. We will support increasing olive oil and avocado oil and coconut oil. Even though coconut doesn't have omega-3s, it's still a good oil for us. And avoiding the seed oils. Those are going to be your sunflower seed, peanuts, canola.
Yeah, I
Not
was
a
going
good
to say
oil.
canola.
Yeah,
Talk about canola, because that's everywhere. And
it's
that's in a
so,
lot of like sunflower oil and canola oil and soybean oil are what's present in most prepared foods outside of your home.
so much easier to cook at home and control your oils and not feel deprived. I mean, as long as you're getting some good yummy fat in there, I don't feel deprived. Oh, grass-fed butter. We can support that too if you're okay with dairy, if you're not going to eliminate dairy, or you can make ghee, which removes the milk solids. Grass-fed butter though, so it will have your omega-3s. And
Digestive enzymes.
yeah, I was just going to say, generically, it depends on what you want to digest. If you had a lot of fat, you'd want to have a digestive enzyme that's called a lipase, because lipo means fat and ase means enzyme. So look for a lipase or a lipase if you want to have your needed help digesting fats. If you're going to have protein that you need help digesting with, you're going to use an acid like a betaine HCl, because the hydrochloric acid is going to help break down the meat in your stomach. The only
But
thing that happens in stomach is breaking down protein with acid.
but what you're doing here is you're doing really good stuff, and but what that means is that you, the nutritionist, you know what questions to ask your client about what kind of symptoms I have from certain foods, and you will help them to figure out, oh, you must be having problems digesting fat or digesting some
Hmm.
carbs. These are the ones. But it is
Hmm.
hard, Ryan, I guess, to answer your question, it is very hard um, to just like say, oh, this one digestive enzyme works for everybody, right? I mean, you can find digestive enzymes in whether it be Whole Foods and Wheatsville and Central Market, maybe even HEB. I want to say that the most widely seen brand I'll see in major stores is Enzymatica, I think. And if you were to look at Enzymatica, there are like 8 different kinds of digestive enzymes that have different things, like exactly what Angela is talking about. Some had more betaine in them, some has more lipase, some has more protease, and so it's a game if you want to play the game and trying it out, or you can work with someone like Angela that can help to determine what's a good fit for you. And it's a good question, Ryan, but it's a little hard to give you specific answers in a general way. Thanks. Oh, see, is there a good, thank you. Is there a good digestive enzyme to help digest veggies like broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower? We're talking some, are we talking like a cruciferous ones? Like
Hmm.
I'm even thinking about things like, it may not be a digestive enzyme. It depends on some genetic stuff that you have, right? When it comes to cruciferous vegetables and the body's availability to clear sulfur out of the body, is that right? And there's maybe some other things that you would recommend to somebody who's having problems breaking down cruciferous vegetables rather than a digestive enzyme. But again, it's looking at the big picture because all of these things are intertwined. So we'd want to spend a little bit more time to understand what else is going on with the broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower. What else, what other foods, what other symptoms there are before maybe going to something specific for just those vegetables. Lisa, I may not have answered your question specifically, but it's a hard one to to be specific about if we don't know the context of what else is going on in your body. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we're at time. What wonderful questions, y'all. I mean, we have like a whole 2 minutes left. If there's anything else, please know that I'm gonna make this available on demand through January 28th. So if you want to watch it again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us. Angela is available for free 15-minute phone consultations if you want to talk to her about meeting with her, but not sure if it's a good value for you. You can always set up some time to talk with her and she can go through that with you. So appreciate each and every one of you joining us today. And hopefully you'll stay tuned to Flourish. We'll do more of these little things in the future. And I really like us being able to answer questions. And so even when we do more free things, we always want to make sure that we make ourselves available. We might give you these answers like, well, it depends, can't give you a blanket one, but at least we'll do our best to answer as best we can. Oh, good. I'm glad. Everybody says very informative. So we met our learning objectives, right? Right, Angela? We wanted it to be informative for you all. So
We
thank you. Thanks
did.
for
We
joining us
did.
and hope to see you all soon. Take care.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.